Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Enterprise Alchemy podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mary Leone, Talent Acquisition Manager at Lennox. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Good morning. It's wonderful to see you, Meg.
It's so exciting to have you on. Obviously, we've chatted in the past, and I thought you'd be a great sport for this podcast. So I want to dive straight into, obviously, what you do for work, your career. Tell us a little bit more about Lennox. But what I really want to speak to you about, and what you are a bit of an activist for, is disabilities in the workplace and why organisations should be more open to welcome them and what we can learn. So I'm going to hand over to you, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So my name is Mary Leone, and I've been working with Lennox, which we do HVAC, and we primarily are in the Americas. And I've been doing that for about 3 years. So I manage a recruiting team, so talent acquisition, that's my passion. I've actually been in the HR space for about 30 years, and it's been in many different areas. But again, talent acquisition is my passion. I have developed an interest in helping people with disabilities, helping businesses find ways to include people with disabilities into the workplace, as well as helping transitioning veterans make it into the workplace after they finish their military career. So lots of fun things.
Amazing. And one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the podcast was because you are so passionate about helping others within your HR realm. So tell me a little bit more. Where have you found that this fear sets in from employers about hiring veterans or people with disabilities? Do you think it lies with stereotypes?
I think it probably stems from the unknown. So sometimes people just don't know much about people with disabilities or veterans. They have these stereotypes in their mind. They envision that all veterans were in combat and they came back with a traumatic brain injury or PTSD. And that's not the case at all. And so there's an equal chance of somebody having PTSD and in the normal population, the non-military population, as it is in the military. And there isn't really direct tie to violence in the workplace. So a lot of times it's just the unknown. That goes the same with disabilities. If they don't know somebody maybe who has a special disability, maybe a hearing impairment or a visual impairment or diabetes, it's kind of scary. And so the more we can educate people about that, I think the better. And one of the things that I always say is we just need to give people a chance and we need to try. And sometimes we need to take away those biases that we've had in the past and we need to just try and see what we can do and learn about what kind of experiences they have that they can bring to the work.
Do you think some of it stems from looking at it from a financial position, that might cost them more as a company to look after someone with disabilities?
That's actually a really good point. And I pulled some numbers on that. I used to do workplace accommodations at a large company. And one of the things people are really afraid of is how much is this going to cost me, if I bring this person with a disability. And over half of the disability accommodations in the workplace cost nothing. And then the average cost is $500. $500. I mean, that's not much at all. And a lot of people are used to doing their own accommodations. They've probably had this disability or maybe they've had it for a while. And so they're used to making suggestions on what they might need. So I'll use myself as an example. I have a hearing impairment and I wear hearing aids and people can't tell. They often look at me like, well, I can't see them, so you must not have them. Well, I do. And so what I have is I have a $100 speaker on my desk at work. And that's something where I can hear the volume much better than I can from my laptop. And that helps me. And again, I think it was actually under $100, maybe $97.50. And so again, that's a very cheap workplace accommodation and something that Lennox was very willing to do.
Oh, that's great that you're in a company where they're really supportive of some of the challenges you may face, but how to combat that very, very simply. And this is something that we did speak about previously. I said to you that I'd spoken to someone who had said that someone in their workplace had autism, and for them it was as simple as having headphones when they were doing their admin, their emails just over, so they could just work in peace. Something that they probably already had in home life as well, that it would have brought into the workplace, something very simple, cheap and efficient. But also this is where I wanted to take a bit of a dive into what we can actually learn from people with disabilities. Because for me, if I was in a busy work environment, I'm very used to working on my own. So actually sitting with headphones would probably benefit me. And I'm not classed with anyone with a disability. So it's almost like we are so naive to what disabilities are and how they look now. It is that stereotype of what people expect, and it really isn't.
And that's a really good point, because there are a lot of things that we can learn from people with disabilities. And one of the things that companies have found is some of the innovations that they have. So, for example, Siri on the iPhone. So that's something where it was developed for people with disabilities. But, can you imagine not having Siri or not having a voice command on your phone anymore? And so it's wonderful that some of these come over into I'm going to call the mainstream population, but it was actually originally targeted, trying to help people with disabilities. But there are so many things that we can learn. People with disabilities often have to face significant challenges, and so they have to be innovative and they have to be problem solvers. And some of those things that are innovative can really help a much larger population. So Microsoft is a really great example. They actually have an abilities conference every year at the second quarter. It's usually in May, and it's free. Wonderful, wonderful conference. They have speakers from all over, from many companies, and it's incredible the number of innovations and how they use people with disabilities at the beginning of the product cycle to make sure that their products and their services can be used by a wide population, instead of completely finishing the product and then deciding, well, how can we adapt this to somebody who has a disability? So incredible, incredible stuff, including gaming and stuff like that, which is very popular.
So obviously that's a large corporation like Microsoft. How do you think smaller organizations can help develop changing this stereotype towards people with disabilities and veterans that want to come in to the workplace? What is it that you're potentially looking at doing or have done in the past that kind of opens up that conversation?
So that's a really good question too. So one of the things I did at my last big company is we did education. So one of the things I found with talent acquisition and recruiters is oftentimes they see somebody, or somebody lets them know that they have a disability, and that's kind of scary, and they want to treat it with kid gloves. And so I did a training. I trained on a little bit about common disabilities. We went through scenarios, and I gave people a scenario. We talked about, we partnered up, and we talked about what would you do in this situation. And then we came back to the group and we talked about it together in terms of best practices. And it was really, really helpful. People really enjoyed that. There are definitely best practices when working with people with disabilities of all kinds. And through education, I think people get a lot more comfortable doing it. Everybody doesn't have somebody in their family with every single disability. However, if you look at that population, it's about 20% of the U.S. population. And we also have, when you look at a close friend or family member, having a disability, that number jumps above 50%. So that's a lot. That's a big population, and you really can't ignore it.
And going a little bit back to the veterans then, where does this kind of passion lie for you? Have you had family members or stories or any challenges that have kind of shaped your career that have made you want to put that first and at the forefront of your mind all the time?
So I have a couple stories. First of all, my husband was in the military. So to fund college, he actually joined ROTC, and then he went into the Army for 4 years. However, that's not really where my passion started. So I was actually working for Texas Instruments at the time, and I was in a position that I was revamping the compliance program. And the U.S. was implementing some very specific with around hiring people with disabilities and hiring veterans. And I looked around, and we really didn't have any processes in place. And so I went to our talent acquisition leader and I kind of made my case. She said, why don't you take on that project? So I did. So I reached out to 120 of our target school contacts in the Disability Services Office, the Career Services Office, the Veteran Services Office. And everybody wasn't doing, best practices, but I pulled all that information together, put together a heat map, figured out where did we want to go, what were some best practices, what do we want to do? And then I met with our talent acquisition campus leaders and I shared the information. And then we started doing things. So I can't say that it was a huge, wild success at the beginning, but we started someplace. And I told them, I said, pick one or two things. One or two things for the school year, see how it goes. If it goes well, let's do more. And if it doesn't, then we'll try something else. And so we actually started, and it really worked well. One of the other passions, so a good story, is one of my husband's good friends actually ended up going in the Army and then he left. And so after he transitioned, he never really found his niche. And that was really before you found, you use the internet and before LinkedIn and finding jobs more easily electronically. And he just never found it. So he ended up going into another branch of the military. And he was hugely successful. And he ended up retiring just recently from that. And he had a very successful transition after that. But I was thinking to myself, if I could have helped my husband's friend, through that process, helped him with finding and navigating the sources and how to network and things like that, it would have been much easier for him. Now, he successfully did it, and we were in touch when he transitioned the second time. But it's tough. Sometimes you just don't know where to start, and the corporate world is much different than the military life. And so the people need to understand that there are a lot of free resources out there, and there are people like me who just want to help.
Mm, mm. And that must be something that I suppose people don't give people in the military enough credit for, because I think when you do go into the military or the armed forces, etc., you do go into that thinking that that is a lifestyle and that is a career forever. And when you come out of that and have to go back in to the normal realm of work or the corporate realm or any sector really, that's a huge leap. We think about people in their 30s and want to change career and think, wow, you've got the courage and you're so brave to think you can step out of the box and do that now, and you're going to really find your passion no matter your age or your experiences. But no one actually thinks about people in the military because we don't see that. It's not talked about often, right? That people do come out and they will change careers. My dad's in the Navy, and I remember him talking to my brother about potentially looking at that. And he was like, one thing you must understand is it's a lifestyle. It's not just a job. Mm-hmm. And nothing prepares you for that.
Yes.
Nothing. So
yes, definitely.
So tell me a bit more about, so obviously you've got 30 years in HR. If there's someone now, a veteran or someone with disability or anyone that is thinking about building their career within HR or looking to take a leap of faith and start something new, is there a piece of advice or your own story you could give to someone thinking back at that stretch of 30 years, not just where you are now?
Mm-hmm. So I actually do a lot of mentoring. I'm starting my third year with a veterans program called American Corporate Partners, or ACP. You're matched up for a whole year with somebody. And so it's similar to the question that you're asking, what kind of advice, would you give people? Because the people that I have been matched with are interested in HR. So a couple things. First of all, HR in the military is much different than HR in the corporate world. So I recommend that they talk to people. So talk to people, if you want talent development, if you want talent acquisition, if you want to be an HR business partner, have informational interviews. It may seem scary at first, to start networking or do informational interviews. People love talking about their jobs, so they don't see any problem with that. I would say build relationships over a lot of times I see people that have, 10, 15, 20 or more years in the service. So that's a lot of people that they know. So continue with those relationships, and a lot of those people who have gone out of retired or left the military before you, they're in jobs now. So they have good companies that you can talk to people. And so make sure that you stay in touch with them, and LinkedIn and resources like that have made that very easy. So you can connect with people, and then they can introduce you to their friends as well and their colleagues so that you can understand a little bit more about the culture. I would also say ask enough questions when you're going through the interview process or you're identifying companies so that you understand the culture. That's important. It's really important to have a good cultural fit. For veterans coming out into their first corporate job or their first job out of the military, 50% leave within the first year. That's huge. I mean, that's a very large number. And so through all of the programs that I've worked with or the volunteering and a lot of the nonprofits, they're trying to help educate people that are in that transition so that they can do a better job of finding that next. And everybody's not going to find, their next where they're going to be for another 25 years. But you'd like to try and last for more than a year. Ask good questions, build those relationships, and, connect with people, have those informational interviews and network. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say I've networked too much. I don't know. And I like doing it all the time. It's fun and I learn something from just about everybody, but it doesn't come naturally to some people and you have to practice. That's okay.
Mm. I'm a big advocate for networking, I must say. It's something that if anyone asks how I got to where I am now or any piece of advice for going self-employed, etc., it is networking. It's been one of the greatest skills I've ever learned. And it is a skill. It is a skill. What is going back to your role now, so as a talent acquisition manager, and you've got various people coming in looking for work and you're putting out feelers for people, etc. What advice can you give to someone to help them get the job or to go in with the mindset of wanting that job and feeling good about it, feeling confident?
So a couple things. First of all, find somebody in the company that you can talk to. So it helps if sometimes we get hundreds of applications for a position and you're just one of a number. If you can actually get to somebody and get in front of somebody, then you're more of a face or a name. And so what I would say, find somebody. There are a lot of employee referral programs. Everybody that contacts me on LinkedIn, I help them by putting them in front of the recruiter that's responsible for the position. Now they have to sell themselves, but I actually help them get to the top of the pile. And so find somebody that can help you do that. And again, that could be through networking. That could be a friend that you have at the company or being creative in terms of trying to find a recruiting person or somebody responsible for the job. And a lot of times you can do that, but they're going to help you go to the top of the pile. Then I would say ask really good questions. So ask questions about what it's like to work there, what the culture is like. Ask people for stories. So people can say, this is what it says on our career site, or this is what it says on our website in terms of for Lennox, we have 3 core values and then we have 9 guiding behaviors. And we live our core values and our guiding behaviors every day. So I have lots of really great stories and we try to share that on LinkedIn. A lot of companies, it's something that's just on the wall in a conference room and they don't live it every day. And so ask them what the culture is really like because you want to know because you're going to be spending, 40 plus hours a week there, a lot of time, and you want to make sure that it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people when they're applying for a job, it's just, I just need to get that yes, and then I'll face the rest later. And actually, it works in your favor to be really proactive about the company, knowing more about the company, asking questions. Is it going to be the right fit for you? When people are trying to find new employees now, I imagine that it wasn't before, but maybe more so now, thinking about retention in staff is one of our highest things that they should be considering now. I don't know if you see it a lot. Do a lot of people tend, or is it around certain ages where they tend to come for a period and leave again? Or do you hold quite a good retention in any of the places you've been as talent acquisition?
So I think it depends. It depends on the specific position. It depends on the company. So I can tell you that people tend to like Lennox and stay here. I actually got a new CEO 2 years ago, spring, and he's made a lot of really good changes. Now, we had a great CEO before, and he had done a wonderful job I think he was with us for 18 years, something like that. Alok has made some really good changes. We've had some acquisitions. We've had some new business, growth, things like that, which is really exciting for us. But our stock price has gone from maybe 230, back in the beginning of 2023. And then in the middle of the year, when we had our second quarter results, it had gone up to 470. So it's more than double. I mean, that's huge. And so we're doing the right things. So I think there's a lot of things that make a company home for people, because it is like your second home. And so you have to like the culture. To me, it needs to have good benefits and kind of a compensation package, but it also needs to be financially viable, and you need to look for something like that. A lot of times it's hard for people to understand the financial statements, but you really need to go in with your eyes open to make sure that the company is going to be a good place to be for a long term.
Talking about finances, this question just popped into my head. It's a genuine question for myself. Talking to yourself in recruitment and HR. I've been helping a friend recently look for some work, and several of the positions within these larger corporations will advertise a job without the salary. And I just wondered if you knew why that was.
I don't know, because that's something that we hear from candidates they want to see. So we've made a decision at positions at a certain level and below, we're going to advertise that salary, because people are telling us that we're not going to apply if you don't put that out there. So why eliminate that entire group of folks before you even get to the application process? So I think some companies may not be as competitive on the compensation side, so maybe that's why they're doing it. But it's called pay transparency in our world, and there's a really big push to have that. So we're trying to do it as much as possible.
So talking about Lennox then, let's tell the audience about #LoveLennox, because there's a really great story behind it, the marketing, and I'd love for you to be able to share that with us.
Yeah, so that's fine. So it started almost 2 years ago. So I was talking to my favorite VP that I support, and we were just tossing around ideas, and all of a sudden we came up with #LoveLennox. We decided we were going to do a campaign within the HR community. And so I started putting this together. And so what we did is we encouraged people to post about the reasons why they loved working at Lennox and use the #LoveLennox. And it became a huge hit. So looking at 2023 to 2024, just for the whole year of 2023, we have already posted as many times on LinkedIn in 6 months as we did in 12 months for 2023. And 70% of our employees are using, or 70% of our posts are using the #LoveLennox. We're also getting huge kudos from our LinkedIn team, because we use LinkedIn Recruiter. We're getting huge kudos from there, and our results are just incredible in terms of building the brand awareness, increasing our numbers in terms of both the recruiting side as well as the branding and the marketing side. And it's fun. So people laugh at me because I know I have one in here. Oh. So you'll see me on LinkedIn, and people ask me when I don't have one of my signs, they ask me where they are. I'm known around campus as the Love Lennox lady. I even when this is a funny story. So we were at the holiday party. My husband was with me. We were in a small circle, and it included the CEO. And I wanted to make sure that he knew a couple of the recruiters that were standing with me. And so we went around. We were introducing, and came to me, and I said, "Yeah, hi, I'm Mary Leone." And he stopped me and he said, "You're the Mary Leone, the Love Lennox lady?" So even the CEO puts it on some of the posts that he sees, and he's very supportive. So we actually won an award for our efforts, and we were recognized by the CEO at the beginning of the year. So it's been a really big success. It's kind of my volunteer job, but it's a lot of fun. We have signs, we have shirts now. We have a picture frame, that people use at big events. We have a lot of fun things. People are actually reaching out to me and asking for merchandise because they like it so much. So a lot of fun stuff.
An incredible and powerful campaign for Lennox as a company, because obviously you've got your employees shouting about why they love you. and why your corporation is great to work for, but also done so well that it encourages employees to engage with it and actually get excited about it and want to post for it. It seems to be actually a harder thing than you'd think is to get your employees to engage with your company on LinkedIn. And I don't know why that is. There seems to be a gap there as to why people want to shout about their companies. And I don't know if that maybe lies from people thinking they're just an employee, but by the sounds of what you guys are creating at Lennox is that, Lennox is home. If you're going to spend 40 hours a week here, you are far more than an employee to us. And I think a lot of companies could really learn from that. And maybe that's your HR background as well, but just treating people like real people and not just someone that checks in at 9 to 5 and then checks out again. Is really making everyone feel part of a team, no matter your role or authority level or leadership level.
Agreed. Yeah. It's important to feel included. So we have a diversity program, diversity and inclusion, and we work very closely with our diversity and inclusion leader. And it's important. One of the things I hear from people when I do my monthly employer branding presentation for new hires is, I've seen you, I know you, and they recognize my face because in their research, which is good, they've looked at our LinkedIn post because they want to know about the culture. Because I want to know, am I going to feel included? Is this going to feel like home? Which is, to your point, it's very important.
Tell me, before we round up the podcast, a little bit about who and what inspires you to make a difference every day, because I know that seems to be something you are extremely passionate about, is making a difference and inspiring people, whether it's helping people find their next best job, helping people feel included, or even just using the hashtag #LoveLennox. What is inspiring you to wake up every day and have that really positive mindset?
So I like to help people. So I like to solve problems and I like to help people. So one of the things that I found is I feel at home in the people with disabilities, and that could be helping businesses or it could be helping individuals with disabilities, but also in the veteran community. It's very welcoming. And so what I found is that I like, posting about that on LinkedIn because again, it's a community. I like talking about it. I like mentoring. I like networking. And then I found with my experience with talent acquisition, I can really help people navigate the transition process. And so I frequently have people that are referred to me. And I also seek out people as well in terms of if I think I can help them as a mentor. So it's a lot of fun, and I've realized that some people don't want advice, which is okay, and some people do, and I feel I can help, but I feel like I can make a difference that way. So I've done. I'm actually doing a Dallas HR talk about networking and relationships and LinkedIn, et cetera, come later this fall. I've done some of that on the veteran side as well, and then I've talked about some of the mentoring that I've done and how I'm in my third match now for American corporate partners. So there's a lot of different ways that I can do it. And with my oldest just graduating from college, I've actually helped a few of her friends. And then my son is in school as well. And I've tried to help some of his friends as well in terms of navigating the landscape.
Lovely. And everything in your life right now and what you've built is so beautiful and it's flourishing and it's doing good every single day. But has there been a pinpoint moment in your life that you met someone maybe with disability or a veteran that just had such a shocking story that you went home with a really heavy heart and thought, gosh, today was actually a really hard day?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's frustrating when you see when you provide advice and you know that they're so close that they just don't want to take it. And you can't control that. You can control what you can control. However, there are a lot of other people who want help. And those are the people that you need to focus on. And so what I've also realized is I'm only one person and I can't do everything. So I need to focus my efforts on something that I can do well and I can put my attention in. So I'm on the board of directors for Disability in North Texas, which is a business to business organization helping businesses with hiring more people with disabilities. And then I do the mentoring program with American Corporate Partners. So those are my two big efforts right now. And if I add, 2 or 3 or 4 more things, my time's going to be divided and it's not as helpful. But I do still like mentoring people, or when people refer somebody who needs some help and wants to network and navigate the landscape, I'm happy to do all of those one-offs as well. Because again, that to borrow a phrase from my friend Dan, it fills my.
I love that. I really love that. So to round up 30 years in HR, what have you learned in 30 years that you can teach us in 30 seconds?
So I would say build relationships. I would say network, network, network. You can always learn from other people, whether that's through mentoring, whether that's through helping them, whether that's through partnering, whatever that is. And don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. Sometimes that's the biggest learning. It can be scary. However, it can be a really great learning experience. And sometimes you just need to take that first step.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Mary. You've been so insightful and just really refreshing person to have from the corporate realm with such a big smile and so much positive energy to bring. So I hope anyone that's watching has felt that they've left with their cup full. So thank you to everyone that's joined us today on the Enterprise Alchemy podcast. I'm Meg, and we'll see you on the next one.